Hello everyone, and welcome to this very special interview as part of the Northern Ireland Science Festival 2025. I am delighted to be joined by Dr. Rosemary Coogan. Rosemary, thank you for joining us and taking time out from what I can only imagine is a very, very busy schedule.
Oh, not at all. Thank you so much for having me. The Science Festival sounds incredible. So I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but it's great to be here virtually and to answer some of the questions that I've heard have come in from the pupils. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, thanks, Rosemary. And as an introduction, maybe you could introduce yourself, where you're from, where you are currently based, a little bit about your background. We'll go into that a wee bit later. And of course, your occupation.
Thanks. Yes, I'm Rosemary Coogan. My background is mainly in science, in astrophysics. And as you might know, I was born in Belfast and I'm now living in Germany, where the European Astronaut Centre is. But I'm actually calling from Houston in Texas because I'm spending the next few months doing some training with NASA. And that's because I was recently selected by the European Space Agency, ESA, to be an astronaut.
It's fantastic, Rosemary. And I think for a lot of us here, you know, it's tremendous to see somebody Belfast born, you know, and on this journey to the stars. And of course, many of us look to the stars firmly here from the ground. But of course, you are a professional stargazer. You're an astronaut, but you're an astrophysicist to start with. I was wondering, could you tell us first of all about that astrophysicist, that life as an astrophysicist, and what that entails, and then what inspired you to pursue this role as an astronaut?
Yeah, so I went to university to study physics and astronomy, and then after that I did a PhD in astrophysics. And so I was really mainly involved in the research side of space science, and my work was really looking into how galaxies in the universe, some of them very like our Milky Way, some of them very different, how they grow and evolve with time. So I've always been fascinated by space itself. And I think what really led me to being an astronaut, or to wanting to apply for that, was being able to combine the physical exploration of space to actually go there with doing all different types of science in space, because that's really what we're doing as an astronaut on the ISS, the International Space Station. We're doing all different types of science that often actually have nothing to do with space. It's medical science or materials science, to be able to get involved in all of these different projects that people on the ground have thought up that need to be done in space, and to carry them out. I just thought it was an amazing opportunity.
And of course, you just don't go there. You've got to train. And most of us just think of the training as what we see in the movies, but can you tell us a little bit, what's astronaut training really like? And from your perspective, what skills did you bring that you already had that helped you with your astronaut training?
Yeah, so the astronaut training, I think you make a really good point. We don't see all different sides of it in films and things, and there is a lot of classroom-based learning, and that's probably the bit that's maybe talked about the least. But there's a huge amount of learning in classrooms, and that's really learning a lot of the fundamentals of different areas of science, particularly to give a background to the sort of experiments we'll be carrying out, to learn all about the systems on board the ISS, the kind of engineering behind some of those bits. And then there is the whole kind of practical side of training. So that ranges from physical training, staying fit and healthy, experiences in the centrifuge to prepare yourself for launch and landing, training for spacewalks, and all sorts of survival trainings, again, for launch and landing. So I would say it's really varied, it's really broad, and that's one of the things I love about it. In terms of kind of bringing skills into that already, it's a difficult one. I think having a background in science, having that kind of physics basis, helps to understand some of the physics behind the technical systems that we learn about. And I was actually in the Royal Naval Reserves for a few years whilst I was at university, and that exposed me to kind of the idea of working in small teams and quite isolated environments. But really, I think that, you know, a lot of what I learn now, it's really brand new information. And I think learning to be a good crew member is something you're constantly developing. So it's much more about having the kind of willingness and motivation to learn new things. I think that's really important during the training.
And were there any aspects you found particularly challenging?
Yeah, I think through basic training, one of the things I found most challenging was just the volume of new bits of information from all different topics. But right now I'm actually doing what I think is quite a challenging bit of the training. I'm at NASA now because I'm doing the spacewalk training, or the EVA, extravehicular activity training. And this is training for when an astronaut will go outside the space station. And that is what we often see a lot in the films. You're in the spacesuit and you might be making repairs to the outside of the station or installing different bits of hardware. And we train for that by actually putting on the real spacesuit itself and training underwater, where we have huge kind of life-size models of the International Space Station, and we train with all of the different tools and all of the different procedures. And I'm finding that quite challenging because physically it's quite difficult to work in the suit. And because it's one of the more dangerous things that we do, there are so many different procedures and ways things need to be done to make sure that it's safe and successful, that it's very, very special, but definitely more challenging.
Yeah, and for the rest of us that are all firmly here on the ground, I'm just wondering, what do you think it's going to be like, that first journey into space, and of course, being that feeling of weightlessness, not just in a tank or in a parabolic flight, but sustained, microgravity. I mean, what do you think that's going to be like for you?
It's a great question, and I think it's difficult to imagine. And I think the reason it's difficult to imagine is what makes it kind of so special and so important. We don't do these things every day. It is, like you say, beyond the kind of the short periods of time we get on parabolic flights, and those can be kind of great starting points towards the science. It isn't something we can do on Earth. And so I think it will be an incredible feeling. And I think when you get an astronaut safely to space and the mission is a success, it's rewarding not only for the astronauts, but for all of the people who've worked on that mission to get them there. But beyond that, it's something I'm really looking forward to finding out. Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be incredible. And something else you may have just heard an announcement last few weeks, which of course, again, in Northern Ireland, we're very, very, very excited about, is that, in Belfast, we're going to be manufacturing and assembling the propulsion systems for the lunar descent element for Argonaut. And for those watching, Argonaut is Europe's first spacecraft to go to the lunar surface. So to come from Belfast, that's fantastic. But from your perspective, I mean, what's your thoughts on the future, next generation of lunar missions and beyond, not just for mankind, but also for Northern Ireland?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly exciting that we're going back to the moon. And like you say, I think it's fantastic that Northern Ireland are going to be involved in manufacturing such an important part of this mission. But I think that's absolutely amazing. And it means an awful lot. We're going back to the moon to learn about the origins of our planet Earth, as well as the rest of the solar system. We're going back now with the benefit of all of the new technology that we've been developing since the last time we were on the moon. And we're really this time thinking about how to be on the moon and to do that exploration in a sustainable way. We cannot send up constantly, more and more oxygen, more and more food, more and more water. We need to find ways to actually look, what does it take to build a habitat on the moon, to start to do things sustainably. These are good lessons for us on Earth as well, of course. And so I think, that's gonna be a really interesting thing to discover, and it will help us really when we're thinking about exploration further afield, going to Mars. I think it's a really huge next step for us.
Yes, and of course, the Northern Ireland Science Festival is about promoting STEM to the general public. But of course, a massive part of that is the next generation. And I know a lot of school pupils here in Northern Ireland, we send out a questionnaire, and you can only imagine the amount of questions we got back that they want to answer. We'll be doing this, I'm sure, during the course of the interview. But are there any words of encouragement or inspiration you could give to those pupils, to their teachers, and to their parents?
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and I think it's fantastic that everyone watching this is at the Science Festival. And I'm often asked, have you always wanted to be an astronaut? And I say yes, and that's the case. But that doesn't mean that a career path goes from kind of knowing what you want and you travel in a straight line to get there. And I think especially when we come to things like science festivals, it's really important just to enjoy and to be open to everything you're seeing. There are so many opportunities out there in all different areas of science and engineering and space science, most of which, we don't even know about. And that's what's wonderful about these events, where people come and present what they're doing to you and you can discover. So I would really just be open to that and get involved in or follow up anything you find interesting at the festival. I think that's really an incredible opportunity. So just enjoy it. Yeah.
And Rosemary, as a champion and advocate for STEM and STEAM, I just want to say how proud we are of what you're trying to achieve, and we're all going to be rooting for you when you get that first space flight. And just remember, when you're flying overhead, to look back down when you go over Northern Ireland and wave back at us, because we'll all be waving up. And thank you very much for joining us for this interview.
No, thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Patrick from Derry. I'm 11 years old and I go to Oak Grove Integrated Primary School. I was just wondering, do you wear socks in the spacesuit?
I think that this is an amazing question, and I have a small prop here to help answer this question. I think it's a particularly great question because I only found out the answer to this myself a couple of weeks ago when I was putting on the spacesuit. I had exactly the same thought, and so I asked the experts. And actually, so you can see you've got a very big space boot here, and ultimately it is up to you whether or not you wear socks. You don't have to, but you can see there's kind of some quite rubbery material in here, and actually underneath a spacesuit you wear essentially a kind of a one piece which has some quite similar rubbery material at the foot. So it's not your bare foot going in here, you have another layer, and if you want to wear socks as well as part of that, you can. And most people do wear them for comfort, but you don't have to. But there's quite a few layers going on, and socks is definitely a possible one of them, yeah. I think Saturn is an incredible choice, really, really good choice. The rings are really beautiful and really interesting in the way that they're formed. I think I would choose Mars as my favourite planet for now. It's a very difficult question, but I would choose that because I recently did a geology course and it was teaching us all about if we were to go to another planet, what we'd want to look for in terms of what features might show you that there's been water there in the past, rivers or lakes or different kinds of volcanic activity, and how to look out for that. And we saw some incredible pictures of Mars taken by satellites showing these features. So I thought that was really amazing. So for now, I'll go with Mars, but Saturn is also a very good choice. Not an easy one.
What do you think you will experience looking down on Earth, knowing that there's billions of people supporting you and looking up to you?
Yeah, I think the support that you get as an astronaut already at this stage, you can really feel it. Just having the opportunity to speak to you and to know all of these pupils and students have sent in their questions and they're excited about space and everyone wants these missions to succeed. It's already an incredible feeling. So I think to imagine really having that moment of being in space, looking down at Earth, knowing everyone's hard work that is taken to get to that place, and how, like you say, everyone's rooting for you. I think, I feel so incredibly lucky already, and I think, it will be an unforgettable moment.
What sparked your love and interest for space and science?
I think there wasn't one moment that really started it all off for me. I think I've always just found space kind of wow. It's just, I think the size of it, the beauty of it is always kind of drawn me in. And I think I'm one of those people who asks kind of why a lot. I never really go out of that stage of saying why does this happen? Why does this work? And I think a lot of scientists, that's what kind of really leads us in that direction, is wanting to know how things work, why things are the way that they are, what happens if you change it. And I think when you put that kind of curiosity and this kind of admiration of space together, that's what led me to kind of space science and to here now. Yeah.
Do you have to be fit and healthy before going into space?
You do have to be healthy and fit before going into space, yeah. And the reason that is because being in space, well, both the launch and the landing can can be quite challenging for the human body. It's not something we're used to doing, is going at those kind of fast accelerations. It's the same sort of experience that a pilot might have if they're going in very, very high speed planes or jets. And really being in space, being in microgravity, it's not natural for the human body. We're not moving in the same way. We're not kind of walking around or using our muscles in the same way. And because of that, our muscles can start to get smaller and smaller. And we really need to work hard in space doing physical exercise for a couple of hours every day to really keep healthy. So you need to make sure you start off healthy so that after your body has gone through this and you've been to space and come back, you're still healthy. So yeah, that is a really important part of it. This is a great question. I mean, I haven't been yet inside a rocket. I haven't yet had the opportunity to go to space. But from what people have told me, my experienced colleagues, is that rockets tend to be quite compact. I mean, of course, a rocket itself is huge, but it's the very small part at the top where the crew lives, of course. It's really just about being in there and getting to your destination. And I think as we start to think about going further afield, going to Mars, we might be looking at several months, 6 months in these small capsules. And I think that's going to start to get quite challenging. And of course, that's just the way it is. And there are amazing teams figuring out how to get exercise machines into these small spaces, things like that. But I think if I could wave a magic wand and think of a dream rocket, maybe making something a little bit more spacious for these long journeys. Yeah. Well, that's amazing. I'm really happy to hear that. I love it when people are as excited about space and all of this as I am. I mean, in terms of what you need to do, really, there is no one way to become an astronaut, and especially, when I became an astronaut as a scientist, that was so different to how astronauts were selected before. And really, all you need to do now at this stage is really just find something that you love doing. It might be science, might be something at the science festival. It could be kind of medicine or flying or just any subject that you think, wow, that looks great. I want to keep doing that. Absolutely run with it. Go for that and enjoy it. And, when the time comes for astronaut selection, if you're doing something you love and you're passionate about, that is the best starting point to be in for applying to be an astronaut. I think what I will miss the most if I was in the space station, for example, because it's a completely closed environment by definition. It has to be sealed off from the vacuum of space outside. I think I will really miss that feeling of being outside. I think it's something we probably take for granted a little bit on Earth. And of course, with spacewalks, we're very much outside, but it's a very different sort of feeling from kind of sitting in a park and feeling the breeze and hearing the birds. And I think that kind of connection with nature and outside is what I would miss the most. Yeah. Oh, well, I have also a couple of great examples of some space food here, because I thought it was a really interesting question. Essentially, in space, you can eat loads of different types of food, but how they look is very different to how they look on Earth. So this here is breakfast cereal, and you can see that it's completely dry. It's essentially vacuum packed. So a lot of the food we have in space, this is scrambled eggs. Again, it's completely dry, and you add the water in the top and heat it to make it into scrambled eggs. And here we've got another sachet of space food, and this has got kind of some liquid in. This is chicken in salsa. So I'm really looking forward to eating all of these different types of food in a very different format to how I know them. And also, as well as all of these things which are on the standard menu that we get to kind of taste and try out, and we work with the specialists to build this kind of nutritional menu for the 6 months that we're there that we need. You can also have some bonus food, which is where you can think about things that perhaps aren't on the menu or things you particularly like to eat that can be developed and maybe sent up to space. So I would very much welcome some ideas for that, as well as my favourite foods. Yeah, that'll be fun to do. It is quite a strange feeling to train underwater, and it's really interesting because the reason we train underwater is because it's quite similar to being in space, to having that feeling of floating in space, to being in microgravity, and that's why we do it. But it's not 100% like being in space, because we do still, even though we're floating underwater, we do still have gravity working very much in one direction. If you turn upside down in space, you don't even notice, essentially. But if you turn upside down on Earth, you will feel all of the blood rush to your head. And that is certainly quite a noticeable thing. So I really enjoy it. And actually, when we're underwater in our spacesuits, we have an amazing team of divers who help to kind of offset those gravity effects. If we were holding on to a kind of a tether or a piece of string that hangs down and it's quite heavy, the divers help to kind of lift it up to make it kind of more floating. It's a really amazing system, actually, that it takes a lot of people, but it's really, really good fun training. Yeah.
Can you watch TV like Disney Plus or Netflix in space?
You can watch in space. You can't stream things like you might do on Earth. But actually, you can ask the ground teams to upload TV series or films, and they can essentially upload it to the space station. It's stored on a hard drive, and then at the weekend, if you have some downtime, or perhaps even on the treadmill, if we're doing that quite a lot, if you have some time to watch something, you can do that. So essentially, you can watch in space when you have the time. Yeah.